Hey everyone, I'm OTG197. I'm probably the best Nuzlocker in the world.
You sure about that? You sure about that?
And in this video, I'm attempting to beat a hardcore Nuzlocke of Storm Silver with only Steel types. Now I assume most of you know what a hardcore Nuzlocke is, but in case you don't, here are the rules for this playthrough. Only the first Pokemon encountered in an area can be caught and used in battle, in this case only Steel types. If a Pokemon faints, it is considered dead and can no longer be used in battle. All battles are played on set mode, no menu items can be used in battle, we cannot overlevel gym leaders or the league before facing them, and if a battle is ever lost, we start over from the beginning. Additional rules in the description. I don't use legendaries, so these will be the Pokemon available to us in this run. Alright, let's see how these Steel types can handle a hardcore Nuzlocke of Storm Silver. Alright, well here is the obligatory statement I make in most of my videos, which is that we won't get a viable team member from the starters, but I choose Cyndaquil so that our rival won't have the fire type, though in hindsight if I wanted to make him as weak to us as possible, I should have taken Totodile cause then he would take Chikorita. Yeah, didn't really think that one through, but speaking of the rival, this time he is named Captain Tux after one of my legendary subscribers who was the first to comment the nickname theme in a previous video. If you want a shout out in an upcoming video, be the first to comment the nickname theme down below. Anyways, once we make it to Dark Cave, we can get our first viable team member, which is a Bronzor I named Bazooka, and then in the route below Violet City, I can get a Magnemite I named Magnum. Magnum will be really good for the first gym leader, but I first need to make it through Sprout Tower. Despite Steel types being resistant to most of the moves we go up against in the early game, we actually have some trouble making it through the tower. Of all things, it ends up being a Natu that takes out Magnum with set damage from Nightshade, which I totally forgot it had, and I win the fight, but I am obviously resetting after losing Magnemite this early. Next time around, the Psyduck uses Tail Whip instead of Water Gun, so we have more health. Bronzor helps take out this trainer's Bulbasaur, and then puts the Natu to sleep, which then lets Magnum take it out with a few Thunder Shocks. However, that was just one of the sages. Before we can get out of here, we have to face the Elder. Bronzor easily deals with Bellsprout, but then Chingling lowers our accuracy with Flash, and I try hitting it with Hypnosis, but we miss continuously. Chingling only does 4 damage to us with Uproar, but it starts to add up as we miss over and over again. After making no progress, I switch to Magnemite, who takes out Chingling but is brought all the way to 8 HP in the process. Hoot Hoot is annoying as it can hit its Hypnosis on us, but can't do much damage as we take it out. Lastly, Cherubi is going to be able to finish us off with consistent damage from Leech Seed and Magical Leaf, as we're not able to take it out quick enough. Alright, well, next time around we have better luck hitting a Hypnosis on Chingling, and then Magnemite takes it out without taking any damage, then does the same to Hoot Hoot as it just misses its Hypnosis. This time around, I've gotten Magnemite to a level where we have Sonic Boom, giving us a set 20 damage on Cherubi, so we can take it out quickly. Seems the Sprout Tower won't be incredibly consistent, but now in attempt 3, we can finally take on the first gym leader, Faulkner. Magnemite easily one-shots his lead Doduo with Thunder Shock, and then comes in the one Pokemon with a move we have to be scared of, and that's Pidgeotto with Mud Slap. I switched to Bronzor, who has Heat Proof instead of Levitate, so it can be hit by Mud Slap, making it a lot worse in this fight, but despite 2 accuracy drops, we still miraculously hit a Hypnosis, letting Magnemite come back in and take out Pidgeotto with 2 Thunder Shocks. Chatot gets decent damage with Uproar, but it goes down in 1 hit to Thunder Shock, and then by just spamming out some more, we finish off the rest of his team easily without taking much damage. Levitate on Bronzor would definitely make this a much more consistent fight, but as expected, our Steel types have no trouble handling the Flying Gym. 1 badge. On the way to Azalea, Magnum gets some good training on all the fishing trainers, and then in Union Cave we can get our 3rd team member, an Aaron, whose rock type is perfect for the upcoming gym. However, before facing Bugsy, we have to deal with Team Rocket, and Proton is actually sorta tricky here. His Voltorb paralyzes Magnemite, and after we miss with Sonic Boom and get parried, we're in trouble, so I switch to Bronzor, who finishes it off. Koffing has Flamethrower, which is weakened by Heatproof, but it immediately burns us, which is incredibly annoying, and then Koffing explodes, leaving us at 4 HP, and the burn damage thankfully leaves us at 1 HP. Alright, against Cacnea, I bring in Aron, who takes significant damage from Needle Arm, but hits a Rock Tomb, making us faster on the next turn, and then we can take it out with a Metal Claw. Then Zubat is the least threatening member of his team, and a Shockwave from Magnemite one-shots it to get us out of here unscathed. But man, it was close. Alright, now we can go ahead and take on Bugsy. His Butterfree doesn't really do anything, just setting up a Rain Dance, then Bugsy wastes his Moo Moo Milk as it goes down to a couple Shockwaves. Then Heracross would be pretty scary if it had a fighting move. Fortunately for me, it doesn't, and after hitting an Aerial Ace for little damage, it just tries using Counter, which does nothing as we take it out with more Shockwaves. Pinsir, on the other hand, does have a fighting move, so I bring in Bazooka the Bronzor to take neutral damage from Vital Throw. It annoyingly knocks off my Citrus Berry, but after putting it to sleep we can 3-shot it with set damage from Nightshade. Beedrill and Yanma like to pivot around with U-turn, but Magnemite takes them both out, and our Citrus Berry brings us back up to 36 HP as we face his final Pokemon, Scyther. I paralyze it with Thunder Wave as it starts setting up Swords Dances. I then bring in Rifle the Aron, who matches its Swords Dances with some Iron Defenses to keep Scyther's damage output low, letting us easily finish up the battle with a pair of Rock Tombs. Okay, I think Steel types are starting to get on a roll. 2 badges. After this, I can get 2 encounters before heading to Goldenrod. The first is a Nosepass that can be found using Rock Smash in the Runes of Alph, and then the second is a Pineco in Ilex Forest. In due time, these will be Steel types, but we actually can't use either of them right now, so they go in the box. But then after arriving in Goldenrod, the encounter frenzy continues as we get gifted Piplup and Shieldon here. I can also catch Scyther in the National Park, and then by thieving the wild Magnemite on Route 32, I can get a Metal Coat, which lets me evolve it into an amazing new team member, Scizor. After some Voltorb flip, we get the team some shiny new moves in the game corner, and alright, we can finally take on Whitney. I hit her lead Lickitung with a strong Rock Smash, which is a really good move for Scizor with it being buffed to 60 base power in this game and boosted by Technician. However, after it gets disabled, I U-turn out into Magnemite as she heals, and then finish off Lickitung with a Thunderbolt after going behind a Substitute. I attempt to paralyze Lopunny with Thunder Wave, totally forgetting about its Limber ability, which prevents it, but I bring in Bronzor to put it to sleep, and then bring back in Scizor, who one-shots it with Rock Smash. Clefable sets up a Reflect to reduce our Scizor's power, but 2 Rock Smashes still take it out. I then stall out the Reflect with Bronzor, and once it's gone, Scizor can come back in and KO Wigglytuff with no problem. And then, against her last 2 Pokemon, Miltank and Stantler, they can't do a whole lot to us, and spamming out a couple more Rock Smashes gets us the victory. 3 badges. There is much less expedition between Whitney and the next gym, no encounters, just a very easy rival fight. So yeah, let's just go ahead and take on Morty. I lead Scizor, and our Thief can't one-shot Duskull, but it thankfully misses its Will-O-Wisp, so we can take it out and stay fully healthy. Against Misdreavus, I'm predicting another Will-O-Wisp, so I switch to Magnemite, but it instead hits us with Power Gem. Morty then misses again with Will-O-Wisp.
That's rough, buddy.
But this lets me paralyze Misdreavus with Thunder Wave, and then go behind a Substitute as it just continues going for ineffective status moves, and we take it out with 2 Thunderbolts. Shuppet is one-shot by another Thunderbolt, and then Haunter tries to Hypnosis the Substitute, letting us paralyze it and take it out for free. With our Substitute still up, we can hit the Ace Gengar with a T-Wave as he breaks it with Shadow Ball, and then I switch to Scizor, who 2-shots it with Thief as it just gets fully paralyzed twice. The final Sableye comes in, and with Steel still resisting Ghost in this game, it can't do much to us as I just finished the battle with a few Thieves and a U-turn. We got a lot of help from hacks there, but I don't really think Morty would have given us much trouble anyways. 4 badges. When we finish our fight with Morty, Magnum evolves into Magneton, and then as I leave Ecruteak, we run into Steven Stone, who gives us the Iron Plate. Most of the plate items are really hard to come by in this game. The Iron Plate is one of the only ones you can get very early on, and in this run, it's a really nice item to have. Anyways, as we go through the lighthouse and cross the ocean, a few more evolutions occur, with Bazooka evolving into Bronzong, giving us a strong psychic type before the fighting gym, and additionally with the increased level cap, Revolver, our Pineco, can evolve into Fortress and join in on the action. Before the gym, I face Usain, who I don't always show the fight with, but he is a formidable foe and actually has wiped me in a run that I haven't released yet, so you can never take him too lightly, but with steel types, he gives us no problems. However, we now have to face not only the first gym whose type we don't resist, but one we are actually weak to, Chuck and his fighting types. I lead with Bronzong as his Primeape attempts to set up Substitute, but we break it right away and then take a light Thunder Punch before KOing it with Extra Sensory. Hitmonchan tries the same thing and attempts a Focus Punch but goes down by us just spamming more Extra Sensories. Hariyama is one of his team members I'm most worried about, with Cross Chop's high crit rate being a big threat. I have Fortress take one while setting up a layer of spikes, and then I have Scizor take the next 4 while healing back the damage taken with Roost. Once it's used up its 5 PP of Cross Chop, Hariyama is a lot less scary and can be taken out with a couple of Aerial Aces. Only one Aerial Ace is needed to KO Breloom, though it gets in a Mach Punch, and then 2 are able to take out Poliwrath. Hitmonlee can hit quite hard, but on Bronzong it just hits Fake Out and Bounce, which does paralyze us, but with a couple extra sensories it goes down after healing, getting us the victory. Despite our weakness, we still have solid options for beating fighting types. I think steel types will be pretty hard to stop. 5 badges. With our newly increased level cap, I can finally evolve Prinplup into Empoleon and have him join the party, and then we help the sick Ampharos at the lighthouse, which gets fellow Steel-type connoisseur Jasmine to return to her gym, but before we can face her, we have to deal with Team Rocket again, who have taken over the Safari Zone. On our way through the waves of grunts, we pass through Cliff Cave where there is a measly 1% encounter rate for Steelix, so it takes forever to find one, but once we do, we can add this defensive behemoth to the team. We then take on the executives Petrol and Ariana, but they're incredibly easy. They have mostly poison types that just match up very poorly versus our steel types, and then the non-poison types on their team like Raticate and Honchkrow don't fare much better, so we make it to the final battle without breaking a sweat. Against Archer in the double battle, I am a little concerned about his Houndoom, but after taking out Zangoose, it comes in and Empoleon can handle it with a few Surfs, partially aided by a Fire Blast miss. Riley's Lucario decimates the Grunt's team with some Aura Spheres, and against Archer's last Pokemon Gyarados, I just have Magneton close out the battle with a Thunderbolt. Alright, pretty easy first Rocket Gauntlet. We'll see how the second one goes. Anyways, with that out of the way, we can go on to have our Steel-type showdown with Jasmine. Rock Smash and U-Turn from Scizor is just barely not enough to take out her Metang, and we take an Earthquake with Steelix as a result, but as she heals, I bring back in Scizor, who takes it out with more Rock Smashes and gets back to high health with Roost. I U-turn into Empoleon for Fortress, and it gets taken out with one Surf. Then she brings in Magneton, and this is really scary as its Magnet Pool ability means we can't switch and may have to take a Thunderbolt. But she just goes for Magnet Rise and gets one shot with Surf. Classic Jasmine, has me in a bad spot and completely blows it. Anyways, then comes in Steelix, who is an easy one shot with Surf. Don't think the crit mattered there. Then Skarmory is easily dealt with by our Magneton, and from behind a substitute, her last Pokemon Bronzong can't do anything to us as 2 Thunderbolts wrap things up. I guess if her AI had seen a kill with Thunderbolt, it would have used it, so that may not have mattered. Whatever. 6 badges. We have a lot of great inclusions to the team between the next gym. Now, in normal games, in order to evolve Magneton, you need to level it up in a place with a quote, magnetic field, which would mean we need to get all the way to Mount Silver. However, like the genius he is, Drayano created an item called Voltaic Ore that we can find on our way to Mahogany, which evolves Magneton into Magnezone. Then in Mount Mortar, we can get a great new encounter, Metang. Now if you watched my first run ever, a Psychic type run in Storm Silver, I actually failed this encounter, which ultimately led to us wiping in the radio tower without Metagross to help out. This time around, I come more prepared to catch this Pokemon that for some reason has the same catch rate as Rayquaza. Thankfully, I do manage to catch him, and we name him Machine. In Mahogany Town, we meet up with Riley again, who thanks us for our help by giving me an egg that contains Riolu, who I named Chopper. We then head into the Rocket Hideout to deal with them again, and here is where Rifle Delaron evolves into Aggron, and Chopper evolves into Lucario. Once again, the Rockets are very easy. We don't even have to deal with Archer and his Houndoom this time, just Petrel and Ariana, who give us no trouble. After finishing our business here, we can then go on to face Mahogany Town's gym leader, Price. I lead off with Fortress, who sets up Stealth Rock and a layer of spikes on Abomasnow as we take 2 Focus Blasts. I then bring in Bronzong, who gets rid of the hail with Sunny Day and puts Abomasnow to sleep with Hypnosis. I then bring Fortress back in and set up a full 3 layers of spikes and a layer of toxic spikes as Price stays asleep, and I then bring in Scizor, who finally takes out Abomasnow with Bullet Punch. With the rock type added to it, Glalie takes 4 times damage and easily falls to a Bullet Punch. Our hazards heavily damage Mamoswine and another Bullet Punch takes it out. Dugong gets immediately brought to half, and we take it out with U-turn, going into Lucario. From half HP, a Drain Punch easily knocks out Lapras, and then Froslash we can't really hit with our moveset, so I just bring back in Scizor on a weak Thunderbolt, and one more Bullet Punch finishes a pretty easy battle. 7 badges. Ugh, yet again, we have to deal with Team Rocket at the radio tower. Here I have Metang evolve into Metagross, and this is usually a section of the game where I narrate most of the battles in detail, but they're just so easy with steel types. Petrel gives us no trouble again, but okay, we can take a pause to check out our battle with Captain Tux. We start off with an easy KO on Honchkrow with Magnum's Thunderbolt, then Magmar comes in and it's quite scary, but Empoleon survives his Flamethrower and Focus Blast, and then takes it out with a Surf. Electabuzz comes in and does solid damage to our Metagross, but it gets taken out with 1 Earthquake. Gengar is a bit tricky, putting Magnezone to sleep, but we get off a Thunder Wave. Then on the switch to Lucario, our special defense is dropped by Shadow Ball, so I instead bring in Aggron, who takes it out with 2 Iron Heads. Feraligatr comes in and I go to Magnezone, who lives its Waterfall, and then with a good deal of EV training and a positive speed nature, we can actually outspeed the Gator and one-shot it. Really risky play, but then against the Alakazam, I can bring back in Scizor, and despite being paralyzed and being brought below half with some Psychics, we can take it out with 2 Bullet Punches. Actually a pretty hard fight, not gonna lie, but as we go on to take on more Rocket members, we have a much easier time. Proton puts up a decent fight, but we still defeat him solidly, and Ariana is just as easy as she has been the last 2 times, though I suppose it's a good thing Ariana is easy. I mean, if she wasn't, our rival wouldn't even exist. Alright, well now we've got just 2 more Rockets to defeat, and it starts with Archer and his beefed up team. Against his Zangoose, I lead Fortress to set up Stealth Rocks and 3 layers of Spikes, which will give us a lot of chip damage throughout the fight. I then bring in Lucario and take it out, but Machamp is definitely going to scare me out into Metagross, who gets quite lucky as a Cross Chop is missed on our switch in, letting us take it out with a few Iron Heads after taking an Earthquake, and Archer uses his Hyper Potion. Then Houndoom comes in, taking over half from hazards, and Empoleon heroically takes a Fire Blast to the face, and with its held Choice Scarf outspeeds and responds back with a one-shot Surf. Against his Gyarados, I bring in Scizor on its Earthquake, and it starts going exclusively for Bounce as I continuously chip it with Bullet Punch before it can go into the air, and then roost back the damage taken when it hits us. It takes 3 cycles of this for it to eventually go down to our Bullet Punch, and fortunately for me, we don't take a paralysis from the 3 bounces. Because of this, I can do the same to Drapion, eating up its hits, healing them off, and slowly taking it out with Bullet Punch. He then brings in his own Scizor, but it's not very threatening, and after our massive amounts of hazard damage, it only takes 2 Rock Smashes to knock it out and finish the battle. But alright, now it's Giovanni's turn, and with his team having more of a focus on ground types, we need to be careful. However, his Persian lead is probably the worst thing he could have against Fortress. It can chip us lightly with Slash and even put us to sleep with Hypnosis, but we can just sit there and get up all of our hazards again, even 2 layers of Toxic Spikes that I'm hoping I can bring Tauros or Kangaskhan out into. I then send out Aggron, who takes even less damage from Persian, and we're also put to sleep but hit a Brick Break upon wake up, and then Giovanni actually switches to Nidoking, making those Toxic Spikes useless, and this guy's pretty scary for us. So I bring in Scizor, who takes 2 Earthquakes and hits a Bullet Punch, taking Nidoking to the red. Giovanni then heals to full as our Bullet Punch does less than half, so I bring in Fortress, who takes 2 more Earthquakes, leaving them at 4 HP, and here is where I question whether or not to sack Fortress, but I also see a potential spot to save him, and I actually catch Giovanni being a dummy as I bring in Empoleon, and because the AI saw a kill with all of its moves on Fortress, he goes for Ice Beam, doing next to nothing, and we then take him out with a Surf. Then Giovanni somehow believes Rhyperior is the answer. It also goes down to a Surf, as does Nidoqueen thanks to the hazard damage. Kangaskhan, however, is a bit threatening, so I bring in Metagross, who has the bulk to live 2 Earthquakes and take it out with an Iron Head and Bullet Punch. But now Tauros comes in, and it also has a strong Earthquake, and we can't take another, so I send in Empoleon, who can live 1. And I'm not sure if Surf kills even with all the hazard damage, but I just gotta go for it. And it does take out Tauros. Whew, I feel like that had to be a super close range. But alright, Team Rocket is finally done for, and we can now head to Blackthorn to get our final gym badge. Before we face Claire, we can get a great new encounter in the route below Blackthorn, which is a Skarmory, and man, it would have come in handy against all those Earthquakes we just took. Actually, come to think of it, I'm pretty sure I could have come to this route much sooner by going through Dark Cave and gotten Skarmory already, so I made the Rocket Gauntlet much harder for myself than it needed to be. Well, either way, we made it here, and now we can take on Claire for the Rising Badge. I open up against her lead Dragonair with a one-shot Ice Punch from Metagross. She then sends out Gyarados, which is now a lot less scary with Skarmory on our team, and despite her getting up a few Dragon Dances, with Toxic and Fly, we're able to take it out without getting hit. Salamence comes in and it has a hot Fire Blast coming for me, but Pump the Empoleon takes it easily, and then with Choice Scarf can outspeed for a one-shot with Ice Beam. Another Ice Beam doesn't quite one-shot Dragonair, and we take an Outrage, so I then bring in Skarmory, get up a Spike, and then bring in Lucario as she heals, but we take it out with an Ice Punch, and then do the same to her Altaria. Her last Pokemon is Kingdra, and our Drain Punch brings it below half, but its Citrus Berry takes it back above as we're confused by a Swagger. So I switch around a bit, trying to find a stable matchup to start attacking it again, but Metagross, Scizor, and Magnezone can't manage to get in safely, so I send in my half-health Empoleon, who is brought dangerously low with 2 Hydro Pumps, but we get some valuable chip damage with an Ice Beam, and then I bring in Lucario as she thankfully goes for Dragon Pulse instead of Hydro Pump. It does basically nothing, and one more Dragon Punch finishes off her final Pokemon. Phew, I was really worried about how we were going to handle that Kingdra, but we weathered the storm solidly. 8 badges. Before heading to the league, Claire makes us take the Dragon's Den test to prove that we are a worthy trainer, and this test is so funny because, like, okay, even if you get the answers wrong, the Elder will just be like, "Huh? I must have misheard you," and let you answer again until you get it right. Meanwhile, Claire has apparently failed this test many times, meaning when she gets answers wrong, they're just like, "No, Claire! No! That's wrong! You suck!" So, let's take a second to look at this from her perspective. Some kid shows up entirely using a type you're weak to, beats you, gets no child left behinded through this test, and then the elders of your village tell you to reflect upon why you are not as good as them. I think I now kinda understand why Claire is the way she is. But anyways, we face the Kimono girls, and they're quite easy for us, with Empoleon handling the fire-type Flareon, and now we can make our way to the league, and we face the rival one more time, where his Magmortar actually poses a pretty big threat, but thanks to a lucky Focus Blast miss, we're able to handle it with Empoleon, who is the only one able to take its Fire Blast, and then Metagross takes out Electivire with Earthquake. Skarmory Toxic stalls out the Feraligatr, and I set up a situation to hit Gengar with a guaranteed fly while avoiding its attack. I then bring in Scizor, and the Gengar tries desperately to cheese us with Destiny Bond, so I refrain from attacking, but once it runs out, a Bullet Punch takes it out, and then does the same to Alakazam after Spike's damage. Alright, League time. The first member we're up against is Will, the Psychic Pokemon user. Shout out to Pokemon Stadium 2, where the announcer calls him that. As a kid, I actually thought he was saying the Psychic Pokemon loser, which I found really funny. Unfortunately for him, today he is the Psychic Pokemon loser, as we beat him with 0 issues. Very easy fight. Next up is Koga, who is probably even worse off against our Steel types, who have immunity to poison. Scizor easily takes out his lead Venomoth with a few bullet punches, and then Crobat comes in. It has Heat Wave, but our Heat-proof Bronzong comes in handy to tank that hit and take out Crobat with some Psychics. Then Toxicroak comes in, wanting to Earthquake me, making Skarmory a free switch-in, and we can easily knock it out with some Flies. Weezing is another guy with a strong fire attack, but it also can't do much to our Bronzong, who one-shots it with Psychic. Then against his last 2 Pokemon, Muck and Tentacruel, I can just bring in Metagross, fire off 2 powerful Earthquakes, and they both fall in one hit. After 2 very easy type matchups, we now face Bruno, who has an advantage with his fighting types. However, Skarmory can wall his lead Hitmontop very well, Toxic stalling it out, getting up 3 layers of spikes, and then getting a bit of a 2-for-1 as we fly into the air on a turn where Toxic finishes Hitmontop, and then our fly takes out the Hitmonlee that comes in. Great start for us. Against Hariyama, I bring in Bronzong as it goes behind a substitute. It hits us hard with a Focus Punch as we break it, and then it tries going behind more, but we can now prevent it from staying up, and it gets a last-ditch Thunder Punch, but goes down to our Psychic. Hitmonchan, I get some cheeky chip damage against by using Protect as it goes for high jump kick, but then I'm forced to take one, and we can just barely survive it at 15 HP as our Psychic then takes it out. Alright, great job Bronzong, but now I definitely need to switch, and against Machamp, it's a hard call on what the correct switch is, as whoever comes in is probably taking a heavy attack. But no, actually he missed a Dynamic Punch on our switch to Metagross, and hey Bruno, you know Machamp gets this nifty ability called No Guard? You should maybe try it sometime. Anyways, it goes down to our Meteor Mash, and then his Lucario is easily taken out with a super effective Earthquake. Alright, solid play, kinda lucky, but we're moving on. Like I mentioned with Morty, in this game, Steel still has its resistance to Dark, so against Karen we will have an advantage. I start out again by getting up all of my spikes with Skarmory, and then I have Bronzong Toxic stall the Mightyena, and while switching around to stall it, I kinda take more damage than I wanted, but I get in Lucario on a turn where she will heal, giving me a free bulk up where I can then take it out with Drain Punch and get back the health we lost from Fire Fang. Houndoom comes in, dropping my attack to neutral with Intimidate, but it still gets one-shot by a Drain Punch, and then Honchkrow lives our Ice Punch and paralyzes us with Thunder Wave, so I bring in Empoleon who finishes it off with Ice Beam. Absol comes in, but we can outspeed and take it out with Surf. This is a pretty speedy Empoleon with a plus speed nature and some EV training, which is how he's outsped some foes you might expect to be faster. Anyways, 2 Surfs knocks out Spiritomb, and then her last Pokemon is Umbreon. I love you, Umbreon, but I gotta do it to you. 2 Surfs knock it out as well, so now we can go on to face the champion. Lance, as always, leads with his Gyarados, and I lead Skarmory, who stalls it out with Toxic and Roost. When it goes down, a Charizard comes in, and it sets up a Swords Dance on my switch to Empoleon, who with Choice Scarf can outspeed it, and her Surf doesn't quite one-shot, but it just goes for another Swords Dance, letting us get a free knockout on probably his scariest team member. Against Garchomp, I bring in Skarmory for the immunity on its incoming Earthquake, and then we cringe him out with another Toxic Stall. He then brings in his first Dragonite, and this one has Fire Blast, so I switch to Empoleon to take it, and then we lock ourselves into Ice Beam, which one-shots it. Another might one-shot Dragonite too, which comes in, but this one is a physical attacker with all weak hits against Skarmory, so you know what we do to those. We Toxic Stall it. But actually this time he full restores, I run out of Roosts, and then try to get in Scizor to finish it off with Bullet Punch, but to my surprise he uses a second full restore before we can do that. I can never remember how many of these he has, but it's not a problem as our next Bullet Punch crits to take him out, and then one more Bullet Punch absolutely obliterates his last Pokemon, Aerodactyl, getting us a deathless round 1 against the league, meaning we can head to Kanto on a high note. Now, in Kanto, I tend to abridge a lot of what goes on here, usually breezing past gym leaders that are super easy to save time, and only really mentioning any difficult battles we run into. Against Brock, there is no difficulty whatsoever, it's a very easy fight for us, but then as we head through Mount Moon, we have our final battle with Captain Tux, and for the most part, the battle goes as planned, except for against his Magmortar. It comes in against Skarmory, and I switch to Empoleon on what I think will be a Flamethrower, but it goes for Thunderbolt instead, and gets the 10% paralysis. Ugh, the plan here was to outspeed with Choice Scarf and one-shot with Surf after Spike's damage, but now we will be slower and susceptible to getting two-shot, so I switched to Bronzong attempting to salvage the situation, and we bring Magmortar to like 1 HP while also being brought to low health. My plan here to make it out with no deaths is to bring in Empoleon, live a Flamethrower, bait Thunderbolt and switch to Lucario, who can then finish off the Magmortar. What actually ends up happening is I switch to Empoleon, he misses a Focus Blast, which is so lucky, but even better than what I was hoping for, and then on the switch to Lucario, instead of Thunderbolt, he goes for Focus Blast again, hits it this time, and Lucario gets one shot. To be fair, I did kinda deserve to lose someone there. RIP. Now, we're still in a bad spot. We're down a team member, have 3 paralyzed, another at 17 HP, but Scizor with priority Bullet Punch can finish off the stupid Magmortar that we thankfully never have to face again. And we also thankfully don't get burnt by Flame Body. Alright, from there, the rest of the fight is less problematic. Scizor can come out on top against Alakazam, Gengar, and Electivire, and then against his last Pokemon for Alligator, we have Skarmory wall and stall it out for the win. Man, losing Lucario really sucks, but moving forward, we don't have many issues for a while. Misty is easy, I get 3 quick KOs by abusing her Rain and spamming perfect accuracy Thunders with Magnezone. Her Lantern forces me out, but gets dealt with by Metagross. Empoleon handles the Vaporeon with a few Grass Knots, and then Bronzong can stall out her last Pokemon, Golduck. Against Surge, I bring in Steelix off the bench, and he scores some easy KOs with Earthquake. Metagross does the same on Ampharos, but then Surge's Electrode actually makes the fight a bit annoying, trolling my Scizor with a T-Bolt paralysis, then 2 straight full paras, and avoids our attacks after double team, but eventually Steelix takes it out. Then Raichu can take us out with Surf, so I go to Bronzong. We're brought to low health but hit a Toxic, and then with Protect and well-timed switches to Steelix on his Thunderbolts, we stall it out, leaving us with just Jolteon. It hits a Swagger, but we break through the confusion and finish off the battle with one final Earthquake. We then get a break with some very easy gym fights. Janine is even easier than her father, and
You again? What is it this time? Bug? Flying?
no, Erica, no, we're not doing bug or flying type this time. No, we're just doing steel types. And, we might have like one or two bug and flying types, but we're not like doing those types.
Just take the fucking badge. I'm so over this bullshit.
Alright, well, we actually will get our next scary fight from a random super nerd where I carelessly lead Skarmory without checking what this guy's team is, and he leads with Magneton. Now, normally on a bad matchup, you just switch out, but Magneton's ability Magnet Pull prevents Steel types from switching out, so we're stuck in here on a famously bad matchup, with the only way I can damage it being Fly, which it 4 times resists. I start doing the only thing I can do and hit it with flies, and in any scenario where this happened against a boss trainer, they would just spam discharge until we die, but fortunately for us, this trainer AI picks moves at random, making it as likely to waste its turn with Gyro Ball, Mirror Shot, and Magnet Rise. I get solid luck avoiding discharges while I go into the air, and then him using a useless move when I'm vulnerable. We do take a few devastating discharges, but we can live them from full health, and then with Roost we can not only heal our health back, but it also temporarily removes our flying type, making discharge only deal neutral damage. With this strategy, combined with some amazing fortune, we are miraculously able to chip the Magneton to death with Fly and avoid disaster. It's actually unbelievable that Skarmory survived in that situation. I'm sorry for putting you in that spot, buddy. You are an absolute warrior, and I'm a complete scrub. Alright, well, our next challenge will be against the Fire-type gym leader, Blaine, who not only has another Magmortar, but an entire team of Fire-types. I lead with Probopass against his Rapidash, we take its hits well and paralyze it with Thunder Wave, then I bring in Aggron of all things, who sets up Rain for us with Rain Dance, and then I bring in Empoleon, who with a Scarf can outspeed and one-shot Rapidash, Camerupt, and Arcanine with Surf. But then our rain runs out as Magmortar comes in. This time I'm set up in a better position to deal with it. It lives our unboosted Surf, but just charges up Solar Beam and goes down to another before being able to get it off. Then Makarga goes down to 1 Surf, and Ninetales takes 2, but goes down without being able to accomplish much. Alright, solid performance against the scariest Kanto gym leader for us, and now with Blue, we've got just one more. He leads with Nidoqueen, and I lead Fortress. She continuously roars me out, but she can't do much damage to me, so I just keep switching back, and I'm able to get up Stealth Rocks, 3 layers of Spikes, and Toxic Spikes before taking her out with Metagross. Blue then gets pretty hard exposed for only having physical attackers that can't do a whole lot to our bulky Steel types, as his Rhyperior, Machamp, and Tyranitar all get slowly worn down and taken out. The Gyarados gets a bit scary after setting up several Dragon Dances and being healed with full restore twice, but it's still unable to break through Skarmory, and then his last Pokemon Executor finally brings some special attacking prowess, but with only Grass and Psychic attacks, we can easily wall them, and it goes down in one hit to Scisor's U-turn. Alright, that is all the Kanto badges, and you may have noticed I skipped Sabrina, and that's because the footage of my fight against her got corrupted, though I can show you my rematch against her, which should give you a good indication of how it went the first time. Scizor utterly destroys her, and the rest of the gym leader rematches are mostly easy, but in the rematch against Claire, her Gyarados starts to get out of control with several Dragon Dances, and Claire heals it to full just before it can go down to Toxic. Knowing she will do this, I have Bronzong hit it with Toxic again on the same turn, but a few turns later we're forced to take a Waterfall that destroys Bronzong, giving us death number 2. With some sneaky pivoting between Skarmory and Empoleon, I'm able to waste enough turns for Poison to finish off Gyarados, and then we can easily finish off the rest of her team. RIP to our A1 since day one, but with the rematches out of the way, we can now take on the league for the last time. Will is for the most part easy yet again. Scizor takes out Exeggutor, Empoleon takes out Slowbro, and then Scizor comes back to one-shot Gardevoir. But this time around, Will takes after me and gets himself a Bronzong. Too soon. And it's actually kind of a pain in the ass. It doesn't really do much, but we struggle for a while to take it out after it sets up screens and chips us down with Psychics and Earthquakes. Eventually, with the screens gone and it worn down, I bring in Magnezone to take it out, and then from there, Metagross easily one-shots Jinx with Bullet Punch, and Aggron one-shots Xatu with Strength, which is a Rock-type move in Storm Silver. Koga is once again incredibly easy. Skarmory gets up 3 spikes and takes out Toxicroak, Empoleon handles Crobat with a few Ice Beams, then Metagross comes in against Muck, taking it out with an Earthquake, and does the same to Skuntank and Swalot. We're then put to sleep by Venomoth, but Scizor can come in, and with Venomoth's poison type being changed to Psychic in this game, a U-turn one-shots it easily, and we can now move on to Bruno. Bruno starts off the same as last time. I have Skarmory get up 3 layers of spikes and then knock out his Hitmontop, but this time around he has Infernape, who comes in and hits a strong overheat as I switch to Empoleon, and his held White Herb negates the special attack drop. On the incoming close combat, I go back to Skarmory, who should be able to tank it, but it crits me and Skarmory goes down. Really tough loss, and this thing is still a massive threat. I bring in Scizor to bait another overheat, which Empoleon lives, and this time it will drop its special attack. It goes for another as I bring in Metagross, and at -2 it does just over half, but now at -4 we can live another and finally take out the Raging Chimp with Earthquake. Alright, still 4 more fighting types, and including Bronzong, our 2 biggest checks to them are now gone, and Metagross isn't far from it. This is really dicey. I'm expecting Hitmonlee to use a fighting move, so I switch to Scizor, and we luck out of our minds as he misses a Blaze Kick on the switch, which lets us take it out with Bullet Punch. I totally forgot about this, and now in post-production, I feel like such a fraud. But alright, we can then one-shot Lucario after taking a close combat for half. Then against Hitmonchan, I'm frantically looking for the right play. I go for damage with Bullet Punch, taking Hitmonchan to the red, and we can just barely live another close combat, which is weaker than Lucario's, and here he gives the game away to me by healing Hitmonchan, and calling this out, I set up a Swords Dance and can then one-shot it with a Bullet Punch, and do the same to Machamp after the spikes damage. A 10% chance is the only thing that kept Scizor alive. I guess this is the game's way of paying me back for the 10% hacks that led to me losing Lucario. RNG giveth and RNG taketh. Moving on. Unfortunately for Karen, we do still have Scizor alive. Things would be much easier for her if we didn't, but I use her to take out Weavile, and then after Empoleon takes out the Houndoom, Scizor is free to come back in on Shiftry, set up a Swords Dance, and one-shot the rest of her team with Bullet Punch, except Umbreon, who I take out with U-turn. Alright, 2 more battles, and Lance is next. We immediately make the battle a 5v5 with a Thunderbolt from Magnezone on his Gyarados. Then Garchomp comes in, and with my best EQ switch being gone, I pivot to my second best, Scizor, and then on its incoming Fire Blast, I switch to Empoleon, and we annoyingly get burnt, but with Choice Scarf we outspeed and can one-shot it with Ice Beam. He then sends out Flygon, and I switch to Scizor on another Earthquake that we can just barely live, and we get valuable chip with a Bullet Punch, but our Scizor's borrowed time comes to an end as another Earthquake takes it out. RIP Scizor, thanks for making it this far. I then bring in Empoleon, and with the damage Scizor did, our Ice Beam can finish it off, despite its held Yache Berry. Then Charizard comes in, and I really need an Empoleon Surf to hit this thing, so I switch to Aggron, who is immediately one-shot with Focus Blast. RIP. This lets me bring Empoleon back in and hit a strong Surf, but it can just barely live it, and Empoleon goes down to another Focus Blast. RIP. Man, this is becoming a massacre, and we now are down 2-3. Well, knowing Lance will use a full restore, I bring in Magnezone, who one-shots it with a Thunderbolt that he gives me for free. Then Tyranitar comes in, and it hits a strong Fire Blast that takes us to 15 HP, but we two-shot it with Flash Cannon. Then his last Pokemon Dragonite comes in and finishes Magnezone off with another Fire Blast. RIP. I face his pseudo-legendary with my own, and we take another harsh Fire Blast, but there's no crit, no burn. We live and get the victory with a one-shot Ice Punch. Whew. Our great steel wall, which once stood mighty and impenetrable, has now been reduced to all but nothing. After the first round with the league, I was kinda looking past them this time, thinking they'd be just as easy as they were before, but they have clearly demonstrated why I was wrong to do that. Okay, well, with the reserves in our box, we rebuild as best we can, and we're scraping the bottom of the barrel so much that even goobers like Wormadam and Mawile have been elevated to get some playing time. Let's see if this team can pull it together for one final victory to decide it all. Against Red, I lead off with Metagross, and with it holding Choice Scarf, we can outspeed and one-shot Pikachu with an Earthquake. Not an item I usually use that much, but I've gotten a lot of good use out of it in this run. Anyways, I have to switch against Charizard, and Wormadam gets its shining moment as a Meat Shield for a Fire Blast that absolutely demolishes it. RIP. This lets me bring back in Metagross, who can KO Charizard with a Rock-type Strength. Against Venusaur, I switch to Fortress as he sets up Sword Stance and can do solid damage to us with Earthquake, but I'm able to get up Stealth Rock, a Lair of Spikes, and Toxic Spikes before going down. RIP. I then switch in Steelix, who I think should be able to easily wall a physical Venusaur, but we're put to sleep and then quickly two-shot by some Earthquakes. Alright, now down 3-4, I am trying to find the right path to victory. I bring in Metagross, hoping that after all the hail damage Venusaur has taken, an Ice Punch can take it out, and it does. Awesome. I think that was a really close range. Alright, Blastoise comes in, and I switch to Mawile as he just goes for Fake Out, and here I realize that after training up Mawile to our level cap, I forgot to restore its PP, and we only have one use of Sucker Punch as a way to attack. I get up a Sword Stance and then let it rip, which takes out Blastoise. We can't even damage Espeon, but Mawile actually comes in pretty clutch, letting me Baton Pass +2 attack to Metagross, letting us still hit for good damage after Espeon sets up Reflect, and we take it out with a Meteor Mash. Then Snorlax tries healing off our Meteor Mashes, but by just spamming a few more out, it eventually goes down, getting us the win and closing out the run on our third attempt with 10 deaths. And that is how I beat a hardcore Nuzlocke of Storm Silver using only Steel types. Man, this run had everything. The ups, the downs, the drama, the terrible plays from me. But one thing I can say for sure is the Steel type is damn good. Once we got past our hurdles in the beginning, we really got going, and barring a few tough fights, they are just so strong throughout the whole game. Admittedly, I chose to do a Steel type run because after the nightmarish time I had doing Dark types in Renegade Platinum, as well as the many failed attempts through runs I'm still currently working on, I really wanted to do an easy type and get another run completed that I can make a video with. As expected, the Steel type lives up to its reputation as one of the best types in the game. Thanks so much for watching. I'm hoping to make 2026 a big year for this channel, and I appreciate you all being here with me. Alright, that does it for me. I'll see you in my next run. Peace.